but no one noticed that his eyes didn't shine like they used to, and that his words had become fewer and fewer, and that he stopped talking about his own problems a long time ago, because every time he did, they either brushed it off or turned the conversation back to themselves. So eventually, he learned to stay quiet and wear a mask convincing enough to make the world believe that he was doing okay, when in reality, he was falling apart more and more every single night. He would lie in bed staring at the ceiling for hours, sometimes playing the same memory over and over again in his head, the one where everything broke and no one noticed, the one where he cried silently into a pillow because he didn't want the world to hear the sound of a strong man falling apart, because they had already decided was the one who didn't need help, the one who always had it together, the one who could carry his own weight and theirs too. So he carried it all without complaint, even when it crushed him from the inside. Every morning he would get up and rebuild himself in silence, stitch together his soul with invisible thread, patch up his broken thoughts with forced gratitude, and pretend that the weight he was carrying wasn't slowly suffocating him. And no one asked how he was not really not, in the way that you stop and look a man in the eyes and ask him how his heart is, because if they had, he might have told them that he was tired beyond words, not the kind of tired that sleep could fix, but the kind that grows in your chest and eats at your spirit and makes you question why you even try anymore. But he kept trying, not because he believed everything would get better, but because there were people counting on him, people who leaned on his strength, never realizing how weak he felt inside. And so he became what everyone needed, even when it cost him pieces of himself, because that's what he was taught. Strength means sacrifice, and real men suffer in silence, and healing is something you do alone, not because it's noble, but because no one else has the time or the patience to sit with you in your darkness. And he knew that better than anyone, so every night he bled emotionally in the quiet corners of his mind, while smiling during the day. Every night he asked himself if it was worth it, if being the dependable one was worth the emptiness it left inside him, if giving his all was worth being the one no one gave back to. And yet he never let the bitterness win. He never let the pain turn him cruel. He just let it bury itself deeper inside of him, hoping one day it would disappear on its own. But it didn't. It just changed him, made him quieter, made him colder, made him sharper. Because pain does that to a man. It turns warmth into silence and hope into realism. It makes him look at the world through a different lens, one where love has limits and loyalty has boundaries and kindness comes with armor. And even though he never said it out loud, he was done being the man who gives endlessly without receiving. He was done being the man who pretends he's okay just to make others feel comfortable. He was done being invisible in his own story. And yet no one saw it coming. No one noticed the shift when he stopped answering calls or replying to messages or asking how others were doing. They thought he was just busy or distant or going through a phase. But in reality, he was done with fake friendships, done with one-sided loyalty, done with being the emotional dumping ground for people who never cared to ask if he was drowning too. And when he walked away, they called him cold. They called him changed, but they never asked what broke him. He didn't walk away out of anger. He walked away because he had nothing left to give. He had emptied his heart over and over again into cups that were full of holes. And he finally realized that he was allowed to choose himself, that healing didn't mean pretending everything was fine. It meant walking away from the things that kept reopening the wound, and finally sitting with his own pain long enough to understand it and forgive himself for letting it linger so. Now he sits in silence, not because he's bitter, but because he's peaceful, not because he hates anyone, but because he finally loves himself enough to protect his energy. And if you ask him if he's okay, he'll still smile and say yes. But this time, it's not a mask, a quiet kind of strength, the kind that comes from rebuilding alone, the kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that doesn't shout to be heard because it's rooted in truth. The truth is, he's still healing, still learning, still growing, still carrying a few scars that no one will ever see. But he's not broken anymore. He's awake and aware and unapologetic about the man he's becoming, and maybe he'll never let anyone that close again. Maybe he'll never give his heart away as freely as he once did. But that's okay, because this time he's giving it to someone who truly deserves it himself. They will never understand what it took for him to get here. They will never know the battles he fought in the quiet corners of his soul, the nights he stared at the ceiling, wondering if it was all worth it, the mornings he got up with a heavy chest, but a determined heart, because he wasn't just healing, he was transforming. And transformation isn't loud. It isn't flashy. It's slow. It's silent. It's painful. And most of all, it's lonely. But in that loneliness, he found clarity. In that silence, he found his voice. And in that pain, he found his power. And no one can take that from him now. Not the ones who left, not the ones who stay out of convenience, not the ones who only love the version of him that serve them, because the man he's becoming no longer lives for anyone's approval. And if you ask him today how he's doing, he might pause, smile, and say, "I'm better," not because everything is fixed, but because for the first time he's choosing to feel everything rather than pretend nothing hurts. And maybe that's the real victory, not pretending to be okay, but surviving the nights that nearly broke you, not hiding the scars, but learning to wear them with quiet pride, not proving your worth to anyone but yourself. And maybe, just maybe, being the man who healed alone was always his destiny. Because some journeys are meant to be walked in silence, and some strength can only be built in the dark. So when you see him now and wonder how he got here, know this: it wasn't luck, it wasn't fate, it was pain. It was silence. It was countless nights where he almost gave up, but didn't. And now that he's rising, he's not coming back for applause or revenge. He's coming back for himself. And that is the kind of man no one can break again.